The Phillies went up to Citi Field this week in search of some extra breathing room in the National League East. Instead, their lead shrunk from 7 to 4 games after a disastrous sweep at the hands of the Mets. Let's talk about it next, right here on the PHLY Phillies podcast. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. Tyler Zulli here, broadcasting live from the Xfinity Lounge. You know what happened. You watched the games. We all kind of suffered together with it. But the news and notes of this series are not good, and I think optically the Phillies lost in 3 different ways, and none of them were any better than the rest. And let's take a look back at what happened throughout this series to kind of get an understanding of why the Phillies struggled, not just in this series, but have now lost 10 consecutive games at Citi Field, including 8 regular season and 2 in the NLDS last year. So they lose 3 games, and as they said, the series lead gets cut from 7 to 4 in the National League East. And in fact, not only does that happen, but the Phillies are now 3rd in the National League standings behind the LA Dodgers by win percentage points, which means not only did their lead in the division shrink, but they're also now set up, if the season were to end today, they would not get the bye in the National League and have to play in the wild card round. Who would they play? The New York Mets. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. But on Monday, they lose 13-3, a blowout in this one after taking out a 3-0 lead. They give up 13 unanswered runs from the 4th inning on. 3 runs in the 4th, 1 in the 5th, 2 in the 6th, 4 in the 7th, 3 in the 8th. And we talked about this earlier in the week. The Phillies did a good job of getting to Kodai Senga and getting him out of the game early, but they were not able to do anything with the Mets bullpen. 5 innings pitched for the Mets bullpen, 0 hits for the Phillies, just 1 base runner in a walk. And the Phillies front 4, Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto. This is going to become a recurring theme throughout this video. 2 for 15, 3 runs scored, just the 1 RBI. And the Phillies in that game, 1 for 9 with runners in scoring position, and they left 7 men on base. That's kind of the thought process behind all of this series, even though their losses happened in different ways. Tuesday, a walk-off 6-5 loss. They take a 2-0 lead. For the second consecutive game, they jump out to a multi-run lead on a Bryce Harper 2-run single, but they give up 5 runs in the 5th inning between Jesus Luzardo and Orion Kerkering. They're able to tie the game back up in the 8th on a Harrison Bader home run, but Joan Duran takes the loss in the 9th when he comes into the game with a tied 5-5 game. Brandon Nimmo walks it off for the Mets. That top 4 we talked about for the Phils, a little bit better in this one. 4 for 19, 1 run scored, 2 RBI, but the Phillies were also woeful once again with runners in scoring position. 2 for 10 in this game, and they left 8 runners on base. And then we go to yesterday, the game that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet. Nolan McLean is the story of this one. The Phillies couldn't figure him out, and probably for a little bit of good reason. He was nasty in this one. You see the changeup that he threw to Max Kepler? Looked like he pronated his arm almost sideways, and it almost looked like it was a screwball. It was so good. But that was kind of the story of the whole night. 8 shutout innings for the rookie who made his 3rd career start, and he had faced the minimum amount of Phillies hitters through the first 6 innings. Top 4 in the lineup once again. Turner, Schwarber, Harper, JT, just 2 hits in 16 at-bats. The Phillies, a much smaller sample size because they didn't have a whole lot of runners on in this one. 0 for 3 with runners in scoring position, and they left 4 runners on base. So in total, the 2 numbers that stand out to me are the numbers with runners in scoring position, and of course, the top 4 that we mentioned in each of these 3 games. In the series, Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto, a combined 8 for 46. That's good for a 174 average. They scored 4 runs between the foursome and drove in just 3. And then we talk about the runners in scoring position in the series as a whole. The team just 3 for 22, a 136 average with runners in scoring position, and they left 19 runners on base. Meanwhile, inversely for the Mets, their offense did exactly what they needed to do in each and every game. Now, of course, the number's going to feel a little bit inflated with the fact that they scored 13 runs in Game 1, but they were 11 for 19 with runners in scoring position in Game 1, 5 for 10 in Game 2, which percentage-wise was the worst game that they had, and 5 for 8 in Game 3. Coming out in total, the Mets with runners in scoring position in this 3-game series, 21 for 37. Do you know how impossibly difficult that is to do? The Mets had an answer every single time the Phillies needed to get an out. The Mets had an answer with runners in scoring position. And one guy that I thought had a really good series for the Mets, who continues to haunt the Phillies is Mark Vientos. I think in total this season, Mark Vientos hasn't been all that particularly good. Had an exceptionally stellar 2024 postseason, both against the Phillies and against the Brewers before heading into the series against the Dodgers. But overall, Mark Vientos is hitting just 246 this year, only has 33 extra base hits, and has driven in just 49 runs. But when you talk about Mark Vientos against the Phillies, well, you talk about a third baseman who looks a whole heck of a lot more like David Wright. Or maybe in this instance, even better, how about a Mike Schmidt level of numbers, a George Brett level of numbers? He has been elite against the Phillies this year. In 18 at-bats, 7 hits, 4 extra base hits, and 7 RBI in just 5 games. So in total, Mark Vientos has 14% of his season total in RBIs, 12% of his season total in extra base hits against the Phillies alone in only 5% of his 93 games. Of the teams he's played this year so far against the Phillies, he has the third best batting average of any team he's faced, his best on-base percentage, his third best slug, his third best OPS, and the second most RBI, only less than the Washington Nationals, in which he's played more games than he has against the Philadelphia Phillies. So listen, the Phillies did nothing right this series. Between lack of timely hitting, between the fact that we talked about last week, they had a lot of really timely pick-me-up type of hits. They tie the ball game late in Game 2 with the Harrison Bader home run and immediately give those runs right back in the bottom half of the 9th inning. It's an incredible dynamic that this Phillies team features, because just 9 days ago, we were talking about perhaps the best series of the year against the Seattle Mariners. And it kind of tells you what type of team the Phillies can be and who they are on certain nights. When you think about the best series of the year and probably the worst series of the year, backed up to each other within the span of a week and a half. This is the duality of this team. When they play their best baseball, like they did against the Seattle Mariners, they are without question a World Series title contender. Pick-me-up type of hitting, timely clutch hitting from the bottom of the lineup, great starting pitching, really good bullpen, and all of it came together in a 3-game series against the Seattle Mariners where we raved about the successes that they had, and rightfully so. They outclassed the Mariners in all 3 of those games. Inversely, this week, the Phillies got outclassed by the Mets, and they've been getting outclassed by the Mets for the better part of 2 years now. I don't know if it's Citi Field. I don't know if it's this team, but the one thing that the Phillies did that they absolutely could not afford to do in this 3-game series, and we're not going to overextend our worries and our frustrations more than looking at it from a 3-game lens. The one thing the Phillies could not do that they did in this series was give the Mets life. They gave a team that was playing sub-500 ball since the All-Star break, had some really difficult stretches with their starting pitching not getting deep into games, their bullpen being taxed, Juan Soto's numbers being down in the back end of July and in August. Pete Alonso, the same thing. The Mets now have life. They've played some much better baseball over the back end of August, and the Phillies contributed to that, and now the Mets have life. They've gone from 7 games back to 4 games back, and all of the sudden, instead of it being 7 through 32, they have just a 4-game deficit with 29 games left to play. Oh, and by the way, with this 3-game series sweep, the Mets have clinched the series again, the season series against the Phillies, meaning they hold the tiebreaker come playoff time, which means if these 2 teams finish tied for the division lead, the Mets would win the National League East. The Phillies are going to have to bounce back and do it in a quick fashion. They've got 4 against the Braves before a 3-game road trip against the Milwaukee Brewers, who have played some of the best baseball in all of Major League Baseball this season, specifically since the All-Star break. The Phillies are going to have to bounce back in a major way this weekend, and it begins tonight against the Atlanta Braves.